All right, I think we're live, guys. I think we are. All right, everybody, welcome to the Ecom Sales Tax Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Johnson, and I've got with me my normal co-host, Dan Peisner. Dan, how's it going?
Going well, Andy.
All right, Dan. And also, special guest this week, Jason Parr, our COO, visiting in our St. George office. Jason, welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
All right, Dan. Well, it looks pretty gloomy there in Dallas this week.
Yes, we thought that the weather outside should reflect the sales tax environment right now. Quite foggy.
So you dialed up that weather because it's so foggy right now in the sales tax world.
Exactly.
All right. Well, speaking of foggy in the sales tax world, we need to address a very recent development in California. So Dan, last we met, we were talking about one of our clients who got a letter from the state of California, very threatening letter, very discouraging letter because, what do you do if you've been making sales in California and you just didn't even know you should be collecting sales tax in California? And then California wants you to go back 3, 4, 5 years. What do you do? And so it was pretty alarming, right? And so turns out there's like 60,000 letters, right? Weren't you telling me California, the CDTFA sent out like 60,000 letters?
It was a very large number. I've heard some varying reports, but they got their subpoena data from Amazon, and they just hit that list running.
So their process seemed to be their strategy from the CDTFA, which I thought was pretty, evilly done, but effective, was to first say, you should be registered in our state. And so it seemed harmless enough, like, okay, I better get registered. They found me, I better get registered. And then they had their second prong of the approach was to go back and say, oh, and by the way, now that we know everything about you, you should send us the tax from the last X amount of years, right?
Exactly.
So this has created a firestorm, let's say, of protests. And so what I want to talk about today is this letter that I'm going to share with you here in a moment, as soon as I pull it up. That was written to the governor of California. And I'm sure there's been a lot of letters written to the governor of California, but this one is particularly powerful because it comes from a high-level official within the state of California. So let me just zoom in on this. So I want to, first of all, get our commentary, our thoughts on the letter in general, and then what are we advising our clients to do about this letter? Because California is usually the biggest state. If someone sells through Amazon, California is usually by a factor of 2 their biggest sales state. So California is a huge issue. So here I'm sharing the letter, Dan, and it's coming from Fiona Ma, who is the current treasurer of the state of California. Is that an elected official, Dan?
Yes, Fiona is an elected official.
So elected officials always need to keep their name in the public view in a very friendly way, right? They don't want to be the name behind bad news. They leave that to administrators who are not elected. But if there is some good news or some correction of some bad news, they would like to have their name associated with that, right? I mean, everyone wants to be reelected.
Most certainly. Yeah, agreed.
So here she is saying making some very bold statements, right? Because she says, writing to the governor, I want to bring to your attention some actions by the CDTFA that are unlawful, unconstitutional, and impractical. Now, she doesn't say that it's unconstitutional from the California Constitution standpoint. And I would hasten to point out that we are not lawyers, right? Nor do we play one on podcasts. What constitution is she referring to, Dan? What are you thinking?
I really do think it's probably, my guess would be the California Constitution. In the wake of Wayfair, I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody leaning on the U.S. Constitution right now for much in the way of sales tax protection.
Yeah. And by the way, before we dig into this too much, I just want to say for FBA sellers in particular, we have a free guide that's super helpful. Quick read, but will kind of get you up to speed on all issues related to U.S. sales tax. And you can find it at salestaxforonlinesellers.com/free guide. Okay, free guide, all one word, salestaxforonlinesellers.com/free guide. Nothing for sale, no cost to you, just in case you're interested and you want to go deeper. So that's available for you. So anyway, she's saying that what the CDTFA is doing is unlawful, unconstitutional, and impractical. And I'm glad she says it because, first of all, Jason, how do we view things like this just in general? I mean, are we in favor of letters like this?
Well, sure. The letter is, she does use some pretty strong language. And she even in the second paragraph and on in her arguments really looks at it from both ends. She's basically making a claim that they shouldn't be subject to collection of the tax in any regard, prospectively or retroactively. So strong language, it's pro-business, it's in support of taxpayers, remote sellers. It encompasses both ends of the spectrum, but it is just a letter, right? So I just expressed some caution that it's, we agree in this type of letter and even in this type of language, but be careful not to make any dramatic decisions based on this letter, because it is from an elected official to the governor. It's not from the body that enacts these laws or enforces these laws.
Right, Dan. She's the treasurer, but what authority does she have over the CDTFA?
As of she does not have any authority. I think she actually used to be a sitting member on the State Board of Equalization, and up until I believe July of 17, State Board of Equalization was responsible for sales tax, but as there was a law change for political reasons, and those duties are now reside in a separate division. So she has. Based on my understanding, she really has no authority over the CDTFA, or she probably already would have had them do this, that, or the other to try to change policy.
Well, she may have, but it's easy to try to put it on somebody else. So it's a very clear shifting of, hey, governor, they answer directly to you, and your authority to intervene is without question. So you should intervene. So this Fiona Ma is not without position, right? I mean, this is a really big deal. And I would echo what Jason is saying, that from the standpoint of business, I mean, we are a small business ourselves. And so we have always said that we're not in favor even of what the Supreme Court ruled in terms of the South Dakota law. We think it was a big reach. As we've said many times, the state governments in this decision, the Wayfair decision, got more than they could have ever hoped to get in going down to a $100,000 threshold or a 200 transaction threshold. So we already think that the government is overreaching. But we also have to look at this as a practical matter. Like, what do you do if the state of California is going after you with all of its might? And this type of language that the CDTFA is using is very, very harsh and justifiably scary. So if this letter turns out to have any impact, and the governor were to change the policy of the CDTFA, that would be fantastic for all small sellers who only sell through a platform like Amazon FBA, right? That would
Yeah,
be great.
a big win. Yeah.
That'd be a big win for them. But the question is, Jason, maybe you and Dan can really talk this through. When speaking to our own clients, you got clients who are trying to think, should I register in California? And clients who are already registered in California, or they've got these letters from the CDTFA. What should they be doing? And before you answer that, I would just point out that these, for people who are already located in California, they have their operations in California. By and large, these businesses in California are already registered, right, with the state of California. So from a political standpoint, who is CDTFA really going after? They're going after non-California voters, right? So does the governor of California, does he have a big incentive to give a break to non-California voters? So those two questions. Let's start with that one, and then we'll go to what are we saying to our clients and our friends.
Well, I'll just speak to some of the advice that we would offer. We're always about mitigating risk for our clients and trying to insulate them against exposure, whether it be retroactive or looking ahead strategically. So you have to remember, this really is just a letter. We don't know the weight of it in regards to how the governor would respond or react, or if anything would happen. So until laws are written or you have a more formal body that makes a decision, you really have to be careful to comply. And when I say comply, I don't mean just automatically respond to the letter, automatically register, automatically have 4 years of back taxes that are coming out of your own pocket with penalty and interest. But it's to take a look at the landscape, look at the possibilities that are in front of you, and then work with someone like us to identify what your potential exposure is and the methods to try to mitigate that exposure. And then you can develop a game plan. But for now, my broad response is to make an effort to comply with the current law and the way it's being enforced to avoid significant exposure going forward. Don't just bet that this will result in something that alleviates you of that responsibility. That is everyone's hope. But don't make big bets that'll be the case.
Dan, I'll give you a concluding comment.
As a concluding comment, we as Jason said, we're always try to be very conservative, and we always try to work in the best interest of our clients. And believe me, if something does come of this letter, and if they do give a retroactive, any kind of a retroactive pass back to past sellers that have paid tax, penalty, and interest, I'll be one of the first ones in line for our clients trying to get their money back. I mean, we really are hoping that something good comes with this, but our years of experience in dealing with the political reality, looking at the landscape and the political realities, we're very hesitant to tell somebody to just try to put their money on black and hope that the wheel comes up with any kind of an injunction or stop. The Department of Tax and Fee Administration is not, from based on our understandings and our conversations with them, they're not going to stop until there's some kind of a law change or some kind of a directive from the governor that makes them do so.
What have you heard from them directly about this letter from Fiona Ma, or about Fiona Ma, et cetera?
I hadn't heard anything about this letter, but this is relatively recent. My understanding is that their position on it is, as he said, she is an elected official. She does not have official authority over them, and that they are gonna, their position is they're all speed ahead on this, and they are their position is to administer the laws that's written as they understand it, and they're going to be sending out the letters. They're going to be doing collection actions and everything else. So and we recognize it's not a great position for our clients and for other Amazon sellers to be in, because they don't want to pay the money unless they absolutely have to. And they're, you know, I think one of the fears is that there's going to be some blanket amnesty going forward for all these, for sellers, and they'll feel like the sucker that paid in and could have gotten out scot-free.
Yeah, I agree with Dan. It's hard to pull the trigger, especially if you're looking at material exposure. The end result is, though, if something does come of this in a positive nature for businesses, the likelihood is there would be some remedy available for those that complied to either get the funds back or some other remedy to try to resolve the situation. So the real issue is what we always say, and that's to take a look at your exposure in these situations and then find the best method or remedy to mitigate that total exposure and be compliant, so that you're not result of what we call the biggest tragedy in sales tax, right?
Yep. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for your comments on this this letter that just was made public. And once again, in case this is something that you're serious about following up on, and you want more information, want to learn more about all of the impact of sales tax on especially FBA sellers, then you can go to our website, salestaxforonlinesellers.com, and there's a lot of information there, webinars, frequently asked questions. But if you go to salestaxonlinesellers.com, salestaxforonlinesellers.com/free guide, then you can download this free book, and it's a quick read, very good resource there for you. So I welcome you to do that if that's something that you're interested. And guys, thank you so much for your time. This concludes this week's episode of the Ecom Sales Tax Podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Great to be with you.